16, the Supreme Court back in session this week.
Fox 5 legal analyst Wendy Patrick is here with a preview of some of the major cases on the agenda. Wendy, good morning.
Good morning.
Always major cases, obviously. It's the Supreme Court. What happened during the opening session?
Well, the opening session yesterday was very interesting because we only had 8 out of the 9 justices present. So who do you think was missing? Now, many of our viewers might say, well, we've been following the notorious RBG and her health concerns and her cancer 4 bouts. Just finished the last one. But no, she was in her seat, feisty as usual, ready to go. And it was her 71 years old young colleague, Clarence Thomas, who had the flu.
He had the flu.
So he wasn't there, but not only was RBG present, she was fiery. She came out of the gate asking questions. She's 86, God bless her, and still apparently doing a great job, where Clarence Thomas was doing what RBG did last year, as he was reading transcripts and sort of weighing in remotely, as we say.
Excellent.
Let's talk about some of the cases and the big ones.
Yes.
What should we be watching out and looking out for?
So, Shawley, it's a divisive docket this year. And the reason that's important, or I should say one of the many reasons, not only are they the supreme lawmakers of the land, but it's an election year in 2020. So when they deliver their opinions come June, it's going to be very close in time to when we're going to the ballot box. Now, having said that, the Supreme Court is a reactive institution. They are not charged with policy making. They only decide the cases that come to them. And a lot of the reasons that these really hot button issues come before them is lower courts are divided. So they are tasked with resolving this divide. So this term, what's on tap? Well, the usual suspects, we have abortion, we have LGBTQ rights, we have DACA, we have immigration, all the kinds of things that are imminently—
pretty much everything, isn't it?
Right.
Pretty much everything that's relevant to voters in an election year on top of all of that. Now, let me sort of add to that mix the reality that now we have both of the president's appointees, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, populating the bench. So one of the things people are looking at is, well, is that going to make a difference as to how some of these traditionally divisive issues end up coming out?
Because there is a fairly big high-profile abortion case before them. Explain what that one's about and how these 2 new justices will impact that.
Well, it's about whether or not you need admitting privileges if you're a doctor in the state in question. And the reason that's important is there's only one doctor, I guess, in the state that has admitting privileges that would really be able to do it under this law.
Essentially limit
one
the
guy.
whole state to one guy.
That's right.
Who can perform abortion.
The others would have to travel.
Right.
But the deeper issue in a case like that, and the fact that we're even talking about that being in front of the Supreme Court, is long ago, obviously, everybody understood that Roe versus Wade was settled law, and every justice is going to say we're not going to make a difference when it comes to settled law. We're not going to do anything to upend that. But are they going to go around the sides and basically do away with some of the protections that law provides? And this is one of those ways. At least so goes the argument to those that say, well, gosh, if we have such a conservative bench, is that what's going to happen? The DACA case is also interesting because you're looking at the limits of executive power. Now, why is that important? Isn't that a matter of everything this president is doing and that last presidents have done? If we're going to say that by executive action, you're going to be constrained, how then is that going to impact future administrations? So, for example, can the president unwind DACA by executive action? Or, as some of what's been argued in the lower court, is that just too broad? We already sort of have a sneak preview as to the court saying, wait a minute, executive action has to be broad, but is it unlimited? And you can imagine the dangers that we would face if that's true.
You said one of the cases also that they're going to be looking at will affect the LGBT community. What is that about?
That's right. Thank you, Shawley. So we have the 1964 Civil Rights Act that talks about prohibiting discrimination because of sex. The question before it is, when you have people that are gay or transgender and they're discriminated against, is that, quote, because of sex? So it's an issue of statutory construction, because back in 1964, when this law was passed, using it and applying it to people of that community was not envisioned. So is the plain meaning violated if we apply it that way now, or has the trajectory evolved to where it is very much enclosed in the statutory construction as to how we look at that language today? You can imagine the significance of that issue. If it's decided with respect to the cases that are in front of it, you can imagine it'll apply to many other cases. That's important.
Wow. Will any of these cases impact? You mentioned the election. We're, what are we, 13 months away from the election. How is this going to impact that moving forward? Campaigns are heating up.
It's going to impact it first and foremost in the sense that these rulings are going to come down very close in time to the election. But more importantly than that, there are many voters that elect presidents based on their political bent because they're looking at repopulating the Supreme Court.
Right.
I mentioned Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She's 86 years young, but one can imagine that there will come a time that she may think about retirement. Some of her colleagues are aging as well. So it becomes an issue of sometimes single issue voters that want to have either a conservative or a liberal justice appointed will look at the way these decisions are coming down and make a vote at the ballot box just based on that.
Okay.
Highly significant.
Indeed. Wendy Patrick, we thank you as always.
Always a